Welcome to the Cala Builders podcast.
Glad to be here.
There's this very specific picture that comes to mind when you think about Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
It's not, the traffic on the 405. It's not the Walk of Fame. It's the hills.
It's the classic Hollywood Hills shot. It's completely iconic.
Exactly. I mean, whether you're driving Mulholland or winding up into the bird streets or looking at the Palisades from PCH, you see them. These stunning homes just perched on the edge.
Floor-to-ceiling glass, infinity pools that just look like they spill right into the clouds.
It feels like you're living on top of the world. It's the ultimate Southern California dream, right? That mix of architectural drama and just pure elevated luxury.
It is absolutely the dream. It's cinematic, it's aspirational. But, and I kind of hate to be the guy who does this so early in the deep dive. Whenever I look at those homes, I don't just see the view. I see a massive physics problem.
A physics problem? You're already ruining the romance for me.
I have to. I see a battle against gravity. Because the reality is, building on a slope in Southern California is a completely different beast than building on flat land.
It's not the same thing at all.
Not even close.
Yeah.
You aren't just constructing a house. You are engineering a way to defy nature. You're dealing with unstable geology, seismic activity, and a labyrinth of bureaucracy that would make most people's heads spin.
And that is exactly why we are here today. We are doing a deep dive into what it actually takes to build that dream home without it, literally sliding into the canyon.
Right.
And to guide us through this, we're looking at a fantastic stack of resources from Cala Builders.
And for anyone listening who might not know the name, Cala Builders is a serious heavyweight in this specific arena. They're a full-service design-build firm based right here in Los Angeles.
And I want to get specific for a second because credibility really matters in this industry. Their license number is 1032013.
Which is the number you always want to verify before you let anyone even look at your property.
Exactly. And they serve a huge chunk of the region. We're talking Los Angeles proper, Pasadena, the San Fernando Valley, Santa Monica, and beyond.
Right.
What stood out to me in their profile is that they aren't just general contractors who happen to, do a hillside house every now and then. They focus on high-end residential and commercial projects, but they use this design-build model.
That model is so crucial, and we're definitely going to circle back to why that matters so much later on.
Okay.
But basically, it means the architects, the designers, and the builders are all on the same team. They're all under one roof.
So it prevents that classic nightmare scenario.
Exactly. Where the architect draws a beautiful, completely impossible building, and the builder just looks at the plans and laughs.
So our mission today is to unpack a specific guide from Cala Builders. It's called Hillside Construction Challenges in Los Angeles and How to Solve Them.
A great title.
We're going to break down the 6 major hurdles of building on a hill. So if you're listening and you've ever thought about buying that vacant lot with a view, or you're just curious how these mansions stay standing during an earthquake, you really need to hear this.
You absolutely do. Because as the guide implies, the view might be what you pay for, but the ground beneath it, that's where the real money goes.
All right, let's jump right in. Challenge number 1, the ground beneath your feet, or as the source puts it, understanding the landscape, soil and slope. Now, to me, dirt is dirt. If I'm on flat land, I dig a hole, I pour some concrete, and I'm basically done. Why is LA different?
Because in Los Angeles, dirt is, well, it's rarely just dirt. It's more like a geologic cocktail. The source material points out that neighborhoods here vary wildly.
How so?
You might have one hillside that's loose, sandy soil, basically ancient beach dunes that have been pushed up. And then, just 2 miles away, you can have incredibly dense, expansive clay.
Expansive clay, that sounds active.
And it is. It expands when it's wet, and it shrinks when it's dry. It moves.
And that's the risk.
That is the risk. The core problem the guide identifies is stability. Loose soil causes erosion. That expansive clay creates shifting. If the soil moves, the foundation moves. And if the foundation of a hillside home moves,
it's not just a crack in the drywall.
it's a catastrophe.
So you can't just eyeball it. You can't just walk onto the lot, kick the dirt, and say, yeah, it looks sturdy.
Absolutely not. That is the quickest way to bankruptcy. The guide is very, very clear on this. You need a licensed geotechnical engineer.
Okay, so let's define that. This isn't just a surveyor.
No, not at all. A surveyor tells you where your property lines are. A geotechnical engineer is basically a doctor for the earth. They do a deep scientific study. They drill test borings.
So they're taking core samples of the mountain.
Literally. To analyze the composition, the compaction, which is how tightly packed the soil is, and the drainage capability.
So they're basically taking an MRI of the hill before you build.
That's a perfect analogy. And here's the so what for you listening. That study dictates everything else.
Everything.
The source points out that this one report tells you the proper grading strategy and the foundation strategy before anyone picks up a shovel. If you skip this, or if you cheap out on it, you're flying blind.
And flying blind on a 45-degree slope sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is. It seems insane that anyone would try to skip it, but people try to save money.
But this is the foundation of the foundation.
Exactly. You can change your tile later. You can't change the soil density under your house once it's built.
Okay, so we've done the MRI. We know our dirt. Now we hit the second hurdle. And this one isn't physical, it's man-made. The bureaucratic climb.
Ah, yes. The paperwork mountain. It's often steeper and more treacherous than the actual hill you're building on.
So the source brings up Hillside ordinances. Now, everyone kind of gets building codes. You need permits to fix a roof. But what makes Hillside permitting in LA so special?
It comes down to two things, really. Complexity and strictness. You're dealing with the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety, or LADBS.
Right.
And when you trigger a Hillside ordinance, the level of scrutiny just goes through the roof.
What are they actually looking for?
They're looking at environmental impact and safety. These ordinances place really strict limits on building height, because, nobody wants a tower blocking everyone else's view, and very specific setback requirements. But the big one, the one that catches people off guard, is the limit on grading.
And grading is just moving earth around, right?
Yeah.
Flattening things out.
Correct. But the city has strict limits on the volume of earth you can move. You can't just slice the top off a mountain anymore. They track every single cubic yard of dirt you export or import.
Wait, so even if I own the land, I can't just bulldoze it flat to put my house there?
Exactly right. They want to preserve the natural topography as much as they can. And here's where it gets costly. Let's say you design a house that requires exporting, 5,000 cubic yards of dirt to create a basement and a flat pad.
Okay.
But the Hillside ordinance for that specific zone only allows 1,000 cubic yards.
Then your design is illegal.
Your design is dead on arrival. You have to go back to square one, and you've probably already paid the architect thousands of dollars.
That is a nightmare, especially if you find that out after you've paid $50,000 for blueprints.
And it happens more often than you would think. This is why the advice from Cala builders is so critical here. They say you have to partner with a team that knows the specific zoning for that specific slope.
It's not enough to know the general code.
No. You need a team that speaks Hillside. You have to know what the baseline Hillside ordinance allows before you draw a single line. Otherwise, you're looking at months of delays and very expensive redesigns.
Okay, so we have the right team, we have the right permits. Now for the part I think is the coolest. We've analyzed the dirt, we've gotten the permits, now we have to actually fight physics. Segment 3, foundation and retaining walls.
This is where the rubber meets the road, or I guess where the concrete meets the bedrock. This is how we stop the house from sliding into the neighbor's pool.
The source mentions you can't just float a house on a hill. It lists some pretty heavy-duty terms here. Caissons and grade beams.
Yeah.
And I feel like I hear these words on real estate shows, but I don't actually know what they mean. Can you break them down?
Sure. Let's simplify it. Think of a standard foundation on flat ground like a raft floating on water. It just sits on top of the soil.
Okay.
That works because the ground isn't going anywhere. But on a hill, gravity is constantly pulling that surface soil down, so you can't float. You need to anchor.
All right, anchoring. How do you do that?
That's where caissons come in. A caisson is basically a massive concrete stilt that's reinforced with steel cages. You bring in a huge drilling rig, and you drill deep into the hill, sometimes 30, 40, even 60 feet down.
60 feet? That's like a 6-story building going underground.
Exactly. You drill until you hit bedrock or what's called competent, stable soil that isn't going to move. Then you pour concrete into these deep holes, and you create these friction piles.
So the house isn't sitting on the hill, it's standing on legs that go into the hill.
Precisely. And then this is the second part. You have the grade beams.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a web of reinforced concrete connecting the tops of all those stilts together.
So it ties them all into one single unit.
Exactly. It creates this rigid grid. So even if the topsoil washes away or moves a bit during a storm, the house doesn't care. It's rooted into the bedrock. It acts like the roots of a giant tree, but, made of steel and concrete.
That makes perfect sense. And then we have retaining walls. I always just thought those were for, garden beds.
Yeah, to make a nice terraced vegetable patch.
Right. But the source says on a hillside they are structural warriors.
They are the unsung heroes.
Yep.
In hillside construction, a retaining wall isn't decorative. It is holding back millions of pounds of earth. If a retaining wall fails, the land behind it just collapses.
So a wall for a 30-degree slope is completely different from one for a 45-degree slope.
Completely different physics. You might need tiebacks, which are steel rods drilled horizontally into the hill to pull the wall back against the weight of the dirt. It really just emphasizes you can't use a cookie-cutter blueprint. Every hill is unique.
So every foundation has to be custom.
Every single one.
Okay, moving on. We fought gravity, we fought the bureaucracy, now we have to fight the weather, the invisible enemy, water management.
This is huge. The source explicitly says improper drainage is a leading cause of slope failure. And it connects directly back to that whole soil discussion we had earlier.
Which makes sense. We've all seen the news footage in LA after a heavy rain. Mudslides, patios breaking off, pools cracking.
Right, and here's the counterintuitive thing. It's usually not the weight of the house that causes the slide. It's the water.
The water.
When water saturates the soil, two things happen. One, the soil gets heavier. Two, and this is more dangerous, the water acts as a lubricant. It basically turns the layer between the topsoil and the bedrock into a slip and slide.
That is a terrifying image.
It is. So Cala Builders outlines a defense system for this. You have to control where every single drop of rain goes. They list things like French drains, swales, and gutters.
So how do those work together?
Think of it like traffic control for water. You never want water to pool, you want it to move. A French drain is just a trench filled with gravel and a perforated pipe. It sits underground, captures the water, and channels it away from the foundation.
And swales are on the surface.
Yep, swales are subtle channels on the surface, like mini riverbeds. They guide rainwater around the house so it doesn't just slam into your walls.
The guide also mentions positive site grading. That sounds like corporate jargon. What does it actually mean?
It's actually really simple but vital. It just means sloping the ground away from the house.
That seems so basic.
You'd be surprised how often it gets messed up. If the ground slopes even slightly toward your foundation, you're just inviting water to pool against your concrete, and that leads to leaks and erosion. The goal is to divert water completely away from the structure.
It's amazing how much of this is about managing nature rather than just building a box.
That's the perfect way to put it. You are managing natural forces.
Yeah.
You aren't conquering the hill, you're negotiating with it.
So we've got the engineering down. Let's talk about the practical side. Segment 5, logistics and the bottom line. Because I'm trying to imagine getting a cement truck up one of those winding one-lane roads in the Hollywood Hills.
Oh, it is a logistical nightmare. The source highlights access challenges as a major hurdle. Think about it. Narrow roads, blind curves, steep terrain, and usually zero parking.
Right.
Now try to bring in a 40-foot flatbed truck with steel beams, or that massive drilling rig for the caissons.
And half the time the neighbors are parked on the street, making it even narrower.
Exactly. It requires military-grade planning. The source mentions safety strategies, specifically phased construction.
What does that mean in this context?
It means you can't just tear up the whole site at once. If you excavate the entire hillside, you might destabilize it before you even get the walls up. So you build in steps. You excavate a section, you shore it up, you build the wall. Then you move to the next section. It's slower, but it prevents the hill from coming down on top of the workers.
And the source mentions secure material storage. I guess you don't want your pile of lumber sliding down the hill into traffic on Sunset Boulevard.
It's a real risk.
Yeah.
On a flat site, you just dump the lumber in the front yard. On a 40-degree slope, there is no front yard. You have to strap everything down. You have to plan where every single piece goes so it doesn't become a projectile.
Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Money. The source says hillside projects are significantly more expensive.
They are. There is no way around it.
We talk in a small premium or...
It's substantial. I mean, when you add up the geotechnical study, the specialized permits, drilling 50-foot caissons, the structural steel, the retaining walls, the complex logistics.
Yeah.
The price per square foot just skyrockets compared to flat land.
You're paying to make the land buildable before you even pay for the house.
That's it exactly. You're buying the infrastructure first.
So what's the advice on budgeting? I can see this just spiraling out of control so fast.
Transparency. The source stresses transparent cost estimates and identifying risk factors early. You don't want a contractor who gives you a lowball, quote, assuming flat land prices, only to hit you with massive change orders 6 months in.
That classic bait and switch.
It is. So you need a realistic budget that accounts for the engineering reality. You want someone who tells you upfront, hey, this retaining wall is going to cost $200,000, instead of surprising you with it later.
Which brings us perfectly to our final segment. We've talked about the problems, the dirt, the law, gravity, water, money. Let's talk about the guide for today, Cala Builders. How does their specific approach solve these headaches?
This is where it all comes together.
Yeah.
We mentioned at the start they're a design-build firm.
Right.
When you look at all the complexity we just described, the interplay between the soil report, the architect's design, the city's permits, the builder's logistics, having that all under one roof is a massive advantage.
I can see that. In the traditional model, the architect, the engineer, the builder, they're all separate companies.
Right. And when something goes wrong, the architect blames the engineer, the builder blames the architect, and the client is just stuck paying for the delay.
But with design build,
They're on the same team. Instead of the architect drawing a window that the structural engineer says is impossible, they're probably in the same room figuring it out before you ever see it.
the source lists the benefits clearly. Streamlined communication, faster timelines, and budget control.
Yeah, because the builder is involved during the design phase, saying, hey, we can't get a truck up there to pour that, let's redesign this part. It closes the gaps where money usually falls through.
And experience has to play a huge part.
It does. Cala mentions decades of combined experience, hundreds of projects, plus their core values: quality, integrity, and service.
It can sound like marketing speak, but in this context, integrity has a real weight to it.
It does. Integrity means telling you the hard truth about the geology. It means not cutting corners on a foundation that no one will ever see because it's buried underground.
And quality means the house doesn't slide down the hill in 10 years.
That is the ultimate metric.
I also noticed they're pretty versatile. I mean, they're clearly experts in these complex hillside homes, but they also do ADUs, luxury remodeling, even commercial tenant improvements.
It shows they understand construction at every scale. But I think their sweet spot, based on this, is clearly managing these high-complexity projects where you need a steady hand at the wheel.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. We've covered a lot of ground, pun intended. If we had to summarize the hillside formula from this guide, what is it?
I'd say it's a four-part equation. One, deep analysis of the soil. Know what you're standing on. Two, expert navigation of the permits.
The paperwork mountain.
Exactly. Three, deep anchored foundations that defy gravity. And four, aggressive drainage control to manage the water. If you miss one of those variables, the whole equation fails.
And if you're listening to this and you're staring at a piece of land on a slope, the call to action is pretty clear. You need experts.
You do. You cannot DIY a hillside build. Cala Builders actually offers hillside consultations. It's worth it just to have someone who understands what lies beneath take a look.
Absolutely. Get the experts in before you fall in love with the view.
I do want to leave you with a final thought, though. We've talked a lot about engineering and concrete and dirt, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, smart building in LA isn't just about the architecture you see.
It's not the Instagram stuff.
Right? We all love the infinity pool, the marble countertops. But true luxury and true value is the invisible engineering underground. It's about long-term stability and environmental responsibility.
Building a home that outlasts the mortgage.
And outlasts the next 100-year storm. That's the real achievement. It's about respecting the land you're building on, not just trying to conquer it.
That is a great perspective. When you buy a hillside home, you're not just buying a house, you're buying a feat of engineering. Thank you so much for breaking this down with me today.
My pleasure. It was a fascinating topic.
And thank you to everyone listening to this deep dive. Hopefully next time you look up at those houses in the hills, you'll see the caissons and the grade beams in your mind's eye and appreciate the incredible work that went into keeping them there. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.